My phone screen lit up with a text that made my stomach drop. We need to talk about the credit card charges. I'm Rachel Wilson, 34 years old and a marketing manager at Bright Idea Agency in Boston. I've been married to Michael for 5 years now. He's 36 and works as a software engineer at a promising tech startup downtown. We met at a tech conference where I was managing my agency's booth, and it was almost like something out of a movie. Those lingering glances across the crowded exhibition hall, the way he pretended to be interested in our marketing automation, software just to talk to me. Everything was perfect until that phone call from Michael during my most important client meeting of the month. I had to excuse myself when I saw him calling 3 times in a row, something he never does knowing my work schedule. His voice was panicked, accusatory. "Mom found our statement. There's thousands missing. What's going on?" Before I could even process what was happening, I found myself standing in our living room that evening, facing both Michael and his mother, Judith. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Judith's face wore that smug expression I'd come to know all too well over the years, the one that said she finally had proof of what she'd always suspected about me. "I was just trying to protect my son's finances," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. I took a deep breath as 5 years of subtle undermining, backhanded compliments, and thinly veiled criticism from this woman flashed through my mind. What Judith didn't understand was that I'd kept every single receipt since the day we married, including for her extravagant birthday gift, the very purchase she was now using to paint me as some kind of financial criminal. As I looked between my husband's confused, hurt expression and his mother's satisfied one, I knew this accusation would be the last straw. The pattern that had been building for years was about to end, one way or another. I grew up in Springfield, Massachusetts, in a modest middle-class home with parents who worked hard. My mother as a nurse at the local hospital and my father as a high school history teacher. Their example taught me the value of working for what you want, which is exactly what I did by juggling 3 part-time jobs to put myself through Boston University's marketing program. I worked as a barista in the mornings, a retail associate on weekends, and a social media manager for a small business between classes. The schedule was brutal, but it made me fiercely independent and taught me to manage my money carefully. By the time I met Michael at that tech conference, I was already established in my career at Bright Idea, having worked my way up from junior copywriter. Our romance moved quickly. Coffee dates turned into weekend trips to Cape Cod, and before I knew it, Michael was proposing on a Sunset Harbor cruise in Boston Harbor, the city lights twinkling behind him as he got down on one knee. I was over the moon until I met Judith at an upscale restaurant in Beacon Hill a week later. She arrived dressed immaculately in designer clothes, immediately assessing everything from my outfit to my posture with calculating eyes. Throughout that dinner, she peppered me with questions about my family background, future career goals, and made thinly veiled comments about how Michael needs a wife who prioritizes family. I tried to be understanding. She was just protective of her only son, but things only escalated during our wedding planning. What should have been decisions between Michael and me became 3-way negotiations, with Judith somehow convincing Michael to change our venue, add 30 of her friends to the guest list, and alter our menu selections without consulting me. Michael constantly played mediator. "Mom means well. She just wants everything perfect for us." Our wedding day was beautiful but stressful, with Judith redirecting our photographer for better family portraits and rearranging the seating at the reception without telling us. Early married life brought weekly surprise visits to our condo, where Judith would bring elaborate home-cooked meals and reorganize our kitchen cabinets while commenting that Michael always preferred his pasta cooked a bit longer, dear. The first dinner at Judith's suburban mansion was particularly memorable. She spent the evening questioning my cooking abilities and suggesting I learn her recipes since Michael has always been particular about his food. I started developing anxiety about Judith's judgments and began keeping all grocery receipts after she questioned whether I was spending too much on unnecessary items. Michael couldn't or wouldn't see the pattern, always saying, "She's just being helpful in her own way, Rachel." I created an organized system for tracking our joint expenses, partly as self-protection against future accusations, and partly hoping that with enough patience and kindness, Judith would eventually accept me as part of the family. The final straw from that early period was when Judith questioned a furniture purchase for our home office, suggesting I was being wasteful with Michael's hard-earned money, despite the fact that I was contributing equally to our household finances. That was the first moment I realized this might be a battle I couldn't win with kindness alone. After 3 years of marriage, Michael and I decided to move from our downtown condo to a colonial-style home in Newton, a charming suburb that offered more space with the same commute to our jobs. The house needed some updates, but it had character and potential. And most importantly, it was ours to make our own. Or so I thought. Judith immediately appointed herself our interior decorator, stopping by when I was at work to help by rearranging furniture I had carefully placed and replacing my chosen decor items with ones more to her taste. Around this same time, I received a significant promotion to senior marketing manager, which came with a substantial raise. When we announced it at Sunday dinner, Judith's response was classic. "I'm surprised they promoted you so quickly with your background. I suppose they must really need someone right away." The undermining became more focused on finances shortly after. The first significant incident happened when we purchased new living room furniture. Judith visited for Sunday dinner, spent the entire meal calculating what we must have spent, and then pulled Michael aside to discuss whether such expensive items were necessary. Then there was the time I left grocery receipts on the counter, only to find Judith examining them while helping herself to coffee. "Organic produce is such a waste of money," she commented loudly. "And these specialty items? Michael always preferred simple meals." A few weeks later, she commented to Michael that my clothing looked too expensive for your budget, after seeing me in a new dress I had purchased for a work event, one that I had actually found on a remarkable sale. The most painful part was watching Michael gradually begin to question our spending habits too, asking more frequently about purchases that he never would have thought twice about before. I developed a growing anxiety about spending money at all, often checking prices multiple times and questioning even necessary purchases. My response was to become even more meticulous, creating an elaborate spreadsheet system for all household expenses, categorizing each purchase with justifications. I saved digital copies of receipts by scanning them, while organizing physical size copies and files sorted by month and category. Our first major argument as a couple happened after I bought an expensive food processor to replace our broken one. Michael questioned whether we really needed something that high-end in a tone that sounded exactly like his mother. When I pointed this out, he defended her. "She grew up during harder times. She's just being cautious with money. It comes from a good place." I tried to bond with Judith through occasional shopping trips, thinking perhaps we could find common ground, but these only backfired when she would later comment to Michael about my purchases. "I'm worried Rachel might be overspending on those shoes. Does she really need designer brands?" The situation reached a humiliating peak during Thanksgiving dinner, when Judith questioned how much I contributed financially to our household in front of Michael's extended family. It must be nice for Rachel to have such a successful husband to support her little marketing job. I struggled between confronting the issue directly and keeping the peace for Michael's sake. I even started seeing a therapist who suggested more direct communication with Michael about these patterns. But I feared forcing him to choose between his mother and me, a choice I wasn't confident I would win. Michael became increasingly defensive about his mother's behavior when I tried to address it gently. "That's just how she shows she cares, Rachel. You're reading too much into things." Each time I considered confrontation, I pulled back, telling myself that family relationships were complex and maybe, with enough time and goodwill, things would improve. But after 5 years of this pattern, I was running out of both patience and hope. Everything changed at an extended family dinner where Judith announced her upcoming 65th birthday. She spent nearly 20 minutes reminiscing about a sapphire necklace she had seen at Tiffany's while shopping with her sister. "It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," she sighed, looking pointedly at Michael. "The way the stones caught the light made me think of your father. He always said sapphires matched my eyes." On the drive home, Michael mentioned that with our recent home repairs, we should probably just plan a modest dinner celebration for his mother. "The house gutters and water heater really set us back this month," he reminded me. But something about the wistful way Judith had described that necklace stuck with me. That night, after Michael was asleep, I secretly researched the sapphire necklace she had mentioned, finding it at Tiffany's for $3,800, an astronomical sum for a birthday gift, especially given our recent expenses. I debated with myself for days about whether such a grand gesture would finally win Judith's approval. Would she finally see me as a loving daughter-in-law, rather than competition for her son's affection? The practical side of me knew it was financially irresponsible, but the hopeful side wondered if this might be the turning point in our relationship. After much consideration, I decided to take on freelance marketing work for a local restaurant chain to earn the extra money. For 3 weeks, I worked evenings and weekends creating a brand refresh campaign for their 5 locations, all while keeping it secret from Michael. I told him I was working late at the office on a big client project, which wasn't entirely untrue. I was just omitting the part about it being additional work for extra income. I opened a separate savings account for the gift money to maintain the surprise, carefully calculating how to manage our finances so Michael wouldn't notice anything unusual. I researched our credit card reward programs and determined that our joint card offered the best points for a large purchase, points we could use toward an anniversary trip we'd been discussing. The day I went to Tiffany's was surreal. The white-gloved sales associate showing me various sapphire pieces, the careful selection process, and finally watching as they wrapped the stunning necklace in that iconic blue box. I used our joint credit card for the purchase to maximize those reward points, immediately initiating a transfer from my secret savings account to our joint account to cover the expense. I received a notification that the transfer would take 5 to 7 business days to process due to a security review since it was coming from a newly established account. Still, I wasn't worried. The credit card bill wouldn't come due for nearly a month. I couldn't wait to see Judith's face when she opened that distinctive blue box. After years of tension, this thoughtful gift would surely show her how much I valued family. Her family. I threw myself into planning an elaborate surprise birthday dinner at Judith's favorite upscale restaurant, booking a private room and coordinating with Michael's siblings to ensure everyone could attend. I purchased additional party supplies, ordered a custom cake with a photo of young Judith with Michael printed on it, and selected elegant decorations, all on the same credit card. This is going to change everything, I told myself as I imagined the scene. She'll finally see that I care about what's important to her. Then came the call from the bank about unusual activity on our card requiring additional verification, which further delayed the transfer. When Michael casually mentioned our end-of-month finances looking tight, I reassured him that everything would balance out, careful not to reveal the surprise that I believed would finally bring peace to our family. I hid the blue Tiffany's box in my home office, tucking it behind a stack of financial documents in a filing cabinet where I knew Michael never looked. I spent an evening selecting the perfect gift wrap and card, writing a heartfelt message about welcoming me into the family, and how I hope to build an even stronger relationship in the years to come. As the days passed, my anxiety grew when I checked my banking app and saw the transfer from my separate account still listed as processing after 5 days. Meanwhile, additional purchases for the birthday celebration were mounting on our credit card, a deposit for the catering, custom decorations, and party favors for guests. I found myself working even later at the office, finalizing both work projects and birthday plans in my limited free time. One evening, I received a text from Michael. "Mom stopped by with some homemade soup since you're working late again. Wasn't that thoughtful?" My initial gratitude quickly turned to unease at the thought of Judith being in our home alone. When I arrived home, Michael mentioned casually that his mother helped organize some papers in our home office, claiming she was just trying to be helpful while waiting for him to get home from work. I immediately checked the hiding spot. The gift was still secure, but I noticed the office had been noticeably rearranged, with several folders moved from their usual places. 2 days later, our credit card statement arrived electronically. I made a mental note to explain the charges to Michael once the transfer completed and after the surprise party, so as not to ruin the special moment we'd been planning. What I didn't know was that Judith had visited again during my regular Thursday client meeting across town. Michael was working from home that day, facing an important deadline and mostly confined to his home office with his noise-canceling headphones on. According to what I later pieced together, Judith had discovered the printed credit card statement in a stack of mail on our kitchen counter. Rather than mention it immediately, she waited until my usual gym time 2 days later to return, when she knew I wouldn't be home. She found Michael still working in his office and brought him a coffee before casually mentioning that she was concerned about our financial stability. "I noticed some very large charges on the statement in the kitchen," she said, her voice dripping with practiced concern. "Is everything okay with your finances, sweetie?" When Michael looked confused, she elaborated. "There's a charge for nearly $4,000 at Tiffany's, plus all these restaurant deposits and party supplies. I'm worried Rachel might be hiding a shopping addiction." She planted the seeds of doubt expertly. Where else would money like this be going? $3,800 at Tiffany's? That's not small change, Michael. She suggested I might be hiding financial problems or worse. Some people make large purchases when they're unhappy, or when they're planning an exit strategy. I was in the middle of presenting a campaign to our biggest client when my phone started buzzing repeatedly. When I finally excused myself to check it, I found 3 missed calls from Michael and a text that made my blood run cold. There's over $5,000 in unexplained charges on our card. We need to talk when you get home. I called him immediately, but he didn't answer. My mind racing, I quickly apologized to my clients, claiming a family emergency, and rushed out of the building. As I drove home, I called Michael repeatedly, but each call went straight to voicemail. I finally understood what must have happened. Judith had discovered the statement and jumped to the worst possible conclusion, or more likely, the conclusion she had been waiting years to reach about me. When I arrived home, I found Michael and Judith sitting at our kitchen table with financial documents spread out between them. The atmosphere was so tense I could feel it hit me like a wall as I walked through the door. Our credit card statement lay in the center of the table, certain charges highlighted in bright yellow. Judith wore an expression of performative concern that didn't match the triumph in her eyes. "We're just worried about your spending habits, dear," she said before I could even set down my purse. Michael couldn't meet my eyes, his face a complex mixture of anger, confusion, and embarrassment. Judith immediately took control of the conversation. "Michael showed me some concerning charges that came up on your statement. As his mother, I felt I needed to help him understand what might be happening." She went on to outline what she called a pattern of irresponsible spending that was allegedly beyond our means. "These behaviors often start small," she said, as if diagnosing a disease. "A little shopping here, a splurge there, but $3,800 at Tiffany's? That's not a small indulgence, Rachel." She pointed to the highlighted statement with manicured fingers. Tiffany & Co., restaurant deposits, party supplies, all evidence in her case against me. I tried to explain about the birthday surprise, but Judith immediately interrupted. "Let's not make up stories now that these charges have been discovered, Rachel. It only makes things worse." Her accusations escalated rapidly. "Is the money going to your family? Do you have secret debts we don't know about?" Then came the worst insinuation of all, delivered with a pitying glance at her son. "Some people build up funds when they're planning to leave, Michael. I've seen it before with friends' marriages." Michael finally spoke, his voice strained. "I just want the truth, Rachel. What's going on with our money? I feel like I don't even know what's happening in our own accounts." Every time I tried to explain, Judith talked over me, adding new theories and concerns that made it impossible to get a complete sentence out. I suggested we check my office for the receipts and proof of the transfer, but Judith immediately blocked this idea. "She's had plenty of time to prepare excuses and hide evidence, Michael. You need to be smarter about this." After nearly an hour of this treatment, Michael rubbed his temples and said, "I need some time to think about all this. I can't process everything right now." Judith immediately offered to stay with him during this difficult time, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. What hurt the most was that Michael didn't contradict her or ask her to leave. He effectively chose her side without giving me a fair hearing. After 5 years of marriage, the man who had promised to be my partner in everything trusted his mother's accusations over my character. I made one final attempt to reach him. "Michael, after everything we've built together, you believe this without even hearing me out?" His response cut deeper than anything Judith had said. "The numbers? Don't lie, Rachel. I need to understand what's happening here." In that moment, I realized that years of Judith's subtle undermining had created a foundation of doubt that was now cracking our entire marriage. The woman had finally accomplished what she'd been working toward for years, driving a wedge between us that might be impossible to remove. I grabbed some essentials in stunned silence, a change of clothes, my toothbrush, my laptop, while Judith continued whispering to Michael in our kitchen. I could hear fragments about financial counseling and monitoring accounts. Michael watched from the doorway as I packed a small overnight bag, but he made no move to stop me. As I headed for the front door, Judith called out, "This is for the best, Rachel. You need time to think about what you've done." The 20-minute drive to my friend Allison's downtown apartment was a blur of tears and disbelief. Allison, my friend since college, took one look at my face when she opened the door and pulled me into a fierce hug. "Whatever it is, you're staying here as long as you need," she said, leading me to her couch. The breakdown that followed was unlike anything I'd experienced before. Ugly, heaving sobs as I poured out the whole story, from the sapphire necklace to Judith's accusations to Michael's betrayal. Allison listened without interruption, then handed me a glass of wine and said, "That manipulative witch has been working toward this for years." That first night was sleepless, replaying 5 years of marriage and seeing all the moments where Judith had been laying groundwork for this very scenario. Every criticism, every helpful suggestion, every time she'd questioned my financial decisions, all of it had been building to this moment where she could finally prove I wasn't good enough for her son. Morning brought a brief, awkward call from Michael that resolved nothing. "I just need some time to process everything. I'll call you later." He sounded distant, as if speaking to a stranger rather than his wife of 5 years. Over coffee, Allison helped me analyze the pattern of manipulation more clearly than I'd ever seen it. "She's been isolating him systematically," Allison pointed out. "Notice how your social events have decreased while family obligations have increased? Classic isolation tactic." For the first time, I found myself questioning my own behavior in the marriage. Had I been too accommodating? Had my desire for Judith's approval made me complicit in this dysfunctional dynamic? I tallied up all the compromises I'd made, changing our vacation plans to include his family, adjusting our home decor to suit Judith's taste, always being the one to bend when conflicts arose. My sister Emily called that afternoon after hearing from Allison, offering an outside perspective that hit hard. "This has gone on long enough, Rachel. If you don't stand up now, this will be your entire marriage." That evening, alone in Allison's guest room, I reached rock bottom staring at our wedding photo. 5 years of memories washed over me, the good times that had made all the challenges worthwhile. For a moment, I considered simply walking away. Would it be easier to start fresh than to fight this battle against such a determined opponent who clearly had Michael's loyalty? But as I scrolled through old text messages, I found countless examples of Michael's love and support from before Judith's influence had grown so strong. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Can't wait to build our future together. So proud to call you my wife." Something shifted inside me as I reviewed these messages. The heartache began to transform into anger. Not blind rage, but a clarifying force that burned away the fog of self-doubt. I wasn't the villain in this story, and I refused to be cast as one any longer. I had been keeping receipts, literally and figuratively, for years, waiting for this moment without even realizing it. Every documented contribution to our household, every saved receipt, every financial record, all of it was evidence of my commitment to our marriage. I wasn't just going to defend myself, I was going to address the root problem once and for all. With newfound determination, I texted Michael. "I'm coming home tomorrow at 6. We need to talk, just us." His response came quickly. "Okay." That single word held neither warmth nor hostility, just acknowledgement. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I returned to an empty house the next morning, Michael presumably at work. The evidence of Judith's presence was everywhere. Her cashmere sweater draped over a dining chair, her favorite tea mug in the sink, her distinctive perfume lingering in the air. A quick check of the guest room confirmed my suspicion. Judith had moved in while I was gone, her designer suitcase open on the bed and her toiletries arranged precisely on the bathroom counter. After taking a moment to process this invasion, I turned my attention to gathering evidence. I headed straight to my home office and began a methodical approach to documenting everything. First, I retrieved the hidden Tiffany box with its receipt and proof of purchase from behind the financial folders where I'd concealed it. The receipt clearly showed the date and my name, along with the itemized description of the sapphire necklace. Next, I accessed our financial records going back to the beginning of our marriage, downloading statements that showed my consistent contributions to our joint accounts. I created a comprehensive spreadsheet illustrating exactly how much money I had contributed over 5 years, a sum that actually exceeded Michael's contributions by a small margin due to my recent promotion. I found and printed email confirmations for the freelance work I had specifically taken on to afford Judith's birthday gift, along with the client's effusive thanks for my above and beyond efforts on their campaign. I located documentation of the transfer I had initiated from my separate account to our joint account, which had finally processed that morning. The bank records clearly showed the funds now in our account, covering the credit card charges in full. I printed receipts for all recent purchases, adding detailed notes explaining each one's purpose. Catering deposit, Judith's birthday dinner, custom photo cake, Judith's childhood photo with Michael, decorations, sapphire blue theme, to match gift. As I organized these documents, I noticed a pattern I hadn't fully recognized before. Every major conflict in our marriage had followed one of Judith's helpful visits. The timing was too consistent to be coincidental. I found old texts and emails showing Judith's systematic attempts to create doubt between Michael and me, always framed as concern. Just checking if Rachel mentioned the expensive dinner she had with her friends last night? Or did Rachel discuss that new furniture purchase with you first? By early evening, I had created a presentation that documented not just the birthday gift situation, but the entire history of our financial life together and Judith's pattern of interference. When Michael came home, our greeting in the kitchen was tense, both of us speaking carefully around the real issues. Finally, I asked the question that cut to the heart of the matter. Do you honestly believe I would steal from you, Michael? After 5 years together? His expression shifted, conflict evident in his eyes as he admitted, "The evidence Mom showed me looked bad, Rachel. You have to admit that." I requested 24 hours before continuing the conversation. "Tomorrow we'll talk about everything. I just need tonight to organize my thoughts." Michael reluctantly agreed, adding, "Fine. I'll be staying at the office late anyway." I spent the entire night refining my presentation, organizing evidence, and preparing calm, factual responses to every potential accusation. A video call with Allison helped me practice staying focused on facts rather than emotions. "Remember," she advised, "this isn't just about defending yourself, it's about changing the dynamic permanently." By morning, I had made a crucial decision. Judith needed to be present for the final confrontation. "She started this publicly. It ends publicly," I told Allison. I sent identical texts to both Michael and Judith. "I'd like to clear everything up. Dinner at our house 7 p.m. tomorrow. Both of you, please." Despite my anxiety, I spent the afternoon preparing an elegant dinner. Roast chicken with Judith's favorite sides, Michael's preferred wine, and a dessert I knew they both loved. It was a symbolic act of caring and control, showing that despite everything, I was still committed to this family. I set our dining room table with our best dishes and linens, creating a formal atmosphere that matched the seriousness of the conversation to come. Michael arrived first, his expression uncertain as he hung his jacket in the hallway. "Thanks for cooking," he said awkwardly, hovering at the edge of the kitchen. We established ground rules in a brief, tense exchange. "I need you to let me present everything before you respond," I said. "No interruptions until I'm finished." He nodded agreement as the doorbell announced Judith's arrival. She entered with false brightness, carrying a bakery box. "I thought we could use something sweet for after dinner," she said, as if this were any normal family gathering. Throughout the meal, Judith dominated the conversation with stories about Michael's childhood and thinly veiled comments about couples working through difficult times. I remained calm, responding politely while waiting for the right moment. After serving coffee, I excused myself briefly to retrieve a prepared folder from my office. "Before we continue," I said as I returned to the dining room, "I need to address the accusations about my spending." I began my presentation methodically, starting with documentation of our financial arrangement since the beginning of our marriage. "As you can see from these statements," I explained, showing Michael our banking history, "I've consistently contributed my share to our household from day one." I presented the spreadsheet tracking my salary increases and proportional contributions to our joint expenses, highlighting that my recent promotion had actually increased my financial input. Next, I addressed each recent charge with corresponding receipts and explanations. "This restaurant deposit was for the private room at Salvatore's, your favorite restaurant, Judith. These party supplies were for decorations in sapphire blue, your favorite color." I showed documentation of the freelance project I had specifically taken on for the birthday gift, including emails with the client that clearly dated back weeks before the Tiffany's purchase. I displayed the email exchanges with Tiffany's about the sapphire necklace selection, showing Michael how I had consulted the sales associate about the specific piece Judith had admired. I showed text messages to friends about planning Judith's surprise birthday celebration, all predating the purchases. in question. Michael's expression gradually changed from doubt to understanding as the evidence mounted. Judith attempted to interrupt multiple times. This doesn't explain why you didn't tell Michael about such large purchases, and anyone could have created these documents after the fact. Each time, I calmly but firmly responded, "Please let me finish. You've had your turn to speak." Finally came the dramatic reveal. I excused myself once more and returned with the Tiffany box. "This was meant to be your birthday surprise, Judith. The sapphire necklace you admired at Tiffany's with your sister. The one you said reminded you of your husband's eyes." Michael's shock was evident as he looked from the iconic blue box to his mother's face. Judith was momentarily speechless, then quickly attempted to save face. "How was I supposed to know? You should have told Michael about such an expense before making it." I took a deep breath and addressed the larger pattern. Beyond this incident, this isn't just about a necklace. This is about 5 years of subtle undermining and interference. I presented specific examples with dates and quotes. The time Judith had questioned my grocery choices, the comments about my career, the rearranging of our home when I wasn't present. Each incident seemed small on its own, but together they form a clear pattern of trying to come between us. Michael was silent, his eyes moving from the evidence to his mother's increasingly flustered face as the complete picture of her systematic behavior became clear. When I finished, Judith attempted to play the victim. "I was only trying to protect my son. That's what mothers do." My response was calm, but powerful. "Protection is about safety, Judith. This wasn't protection, it was control. There's a difference between loving your son and trying to manage his marriage." The turning point came when Michael finally stood up to his mother. "Mom, this has to stop. I've let this go on too long, and I'm sorry for that, Rachel." His definitive statement left no room for misinterpretation. "Rachel is my wife and partner. I trust her completely, and I should have from the beginning." Judith's face flushed with anger as she gathered her purse and the untouched bakery box. "I see I'm not wanted here. Call me when you've come to your senses, Michael." For the first time, Michael didn't rush to smooth things over or stop her from leaving. Instead, he simply said, "We'll talk tomorrow when everyone's calmer, Mom." The sound of the front door closing behind her left a powerful silence in its wake. The first time in 5 years I felt Michael and I were truly on the same side against the interference that had plagued our marriage from the start. Michael and I sat in silence for several minutes after Judith left, the weight of everything that had happened settling around us. Finally, he reached across the table for my hand, his eyes filled with regret. "I should have trusted you without question," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "We're supposed to be partners, and I failed at that." I didn't rush to reassure him. This wound was too deep for easy comfort. "Your distrust hurt me more than anything your mother could ever say or do," I admitted. "I've spent 5 years trying to prove myself worthy of this family, keeping receipts like evidence for a trial that I always feared would come." What followed was the most honest conversation of our marriage. For hours, we talked about the patterns that had defined our relationship, his reflexive defense of his mother, my reluctance to force confrontation, and how we had both allowed Judith's influence to grow unchecked. Michael acknowledged his role in enabling his mother's behavior. "I've been conditioned my whole life to keep the peace with her. It was easier to ask you to adjust than to stand up to her." Together, we established clear boundaries moving forward. Michael would take primary responsibility for managing his mother. There would be no more surprise visits, and any criticism of either of us would be addressed immediately, not brushed aside. "I can't promise she'll change," Michael said realistically, "but I can promise that I will." My feelings remained complicated, vindication mixed with sadness that it had taken such a dramatic confrontation to reach this point. The next morning, Michael called his mother while I was present, his voice gentle but firm as he established new relationship rules. Her tearful protests were met with consistent boundaries. "This isn't a negotiation, Mom. This is what needs to happen for all of us to have a healthy relationship going forward." Later that week, we went together to Tiffany's to return the necklace. The sales associate's surprise was evident. "This was such a thoughtful gift. Are you sure you want to return it?" We explained that we decided on something different, something more meaningful and less extravagant. Instead of the sapphire necklace, we selected a simple silver bracelet with a single sapphire charm. beautiful but not ostentatious. The following weekend, we had a follow-up dinner with Judith where the new boundaries were immediately tested. She arrived with thinly veiled comments about overreactions and misunderstandings, but Michael gently redirected each attempt to undermine our united front. By the end of the evening, Judith had grudgingly adjusted her approach, even making an effort to ask about my recent work project with genuine interest. 6 months later, at a holiday dinner, something remarkable happened. After I mentioned a successful campaign I'd managed, Judith actually offered a sincere compliment. "Your agency is lucky to have someone with your creative vision, Rachel." The comment was small, but the lack of backhanded qualifiers made it significant progress. As weeks turned into months, I reflected deeply on what I had learned about myself through this conflict. I realized that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary in any healthy relationship. My habit of documenting everything had been both protection and limitation, a response to feeling constantly judged, but also a barrier to truly trusting the relationship. Most importantly, I learned that respect can't be earned through endless accommodation. It must be required as a baseline for any relationship worth having. The final confirmation of our growth came about 6 months after the confrontation. I was shopping for groceries when the cashier asked if I wanted my receipt. Without thinking, I said, "No thanks," and left the store. It wasn't until I was loading bags into my car that I realized what had happened. I had declined a receipt without anxiety for the first time in years. When I told Michael about it that evening, he understood immediately the significance of this small act. "That's real progress," he said, pulling me into a hug. Our marriage had emerged stronger, with healthier boundaries not just with family but with each other. We had learned to truly partner together rather than navigating around external pressures. As I think back on that painful confrontation now, I realize that facing our biggest fears often leads to our greatest freedom. The evidence I had collected to protect myself ultimately saved not just my dignity, but our marriage itself. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who was trying to undermine your relationship? What helped you find the courage to set boundaries? With family members who overstepped? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember that protecting your relationships sometimes means having difficult conversations, and documenting your truth isn't paranoia. Sometimes it's exactly what you need to break free from manipulation. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences that might help you navigate your own relationships. Wishing you the strength to stand up for yourself and the wisdom to know when it's time to show your receipts.